It's so nice to finally meet you.
Same here.
So happy. I'm impressed with what you've done. I'm even at a loss of what to say, but we'll start from when things were simple, right? From back then when you discovered that this is what you want to write. So maybe you can just give, just a summary, a compact, summary of where you started, how you discovered this is your passion and felt like, wow, I want to do this.
When I started was way back in when I was in primary school. That's when I first got the itch to write. And it was mainly because my brother used to write and draw a lot of stuff. So he used to give me, I used to be like his editor. He used to give me his stories, read them out, correct a few grammatical mistakes, and sort of publish it. Just kid stuff. And most of those stories were because we used to sneak out of home to go to the movies and watch those old Commandos, Rambos, and such. 80s babies know those movies. So through that, I started doing my own writing also. It sort of inspired me. But the single moment that I remember when I really realized that I could take this, okay, like I had some talent in it, was when my school teacher, he was called Mr. Karaoke. He just came to class and he told us to write anything, any story. That was during an English lesson. And normally people are given writing prompts, say, write about your holidays and such, or you're given a certain sentence and you continue from there. But he just said, just write anything that you want to write. So I found myself writing. I don't even remember the story, but I just felt good writing it. And we were given about 30 minutes because I believe back then the lessons were 40 minutes. So we were given 30 minutes. And no, in fact, it should be less because he had to go through the stories, about 20 minutes. Then I wrote it out. He went through the stories and he picked out mine and he read it out to the class. He was very impressed. And at that time, although I was good academically, in English composition, I was never really good. In fact, I think my brother was way better than I was in English, especially creative stuff. But with that single nod, it happened to, I started realizing that, hey, okay, I could start writing creatively.
How much older was your brother back then when you were writing, and where were you publishing the stories?
He's about 5 years older than me only, and I was in class what? Class 6? I think class 6. So he had just started secondary, I guess. Yeah. So it was just our own world. It was all creative, all playing. But when it became serious was much later in 2012. That's when I was first paid to write. Now that was the professional, but where it started is way back in primary school. Yeah.
Okay, so now, so let's fast forward to 2012. How did you get there to a point where now you started receiving money for your writing, and how you arrived at that point where, let me do this?
Okay, okay, let me go back just a few months before 2012. I'd still been writing, but it was just mostly for myself. The only time I did write to perform was I used to be a rapper at Kenyatta University. Yeah, I used to perform at the Cultural Week of Kenyatta University. So I then saw a screenplay because I still had that bag of movies from when I was a kid, sneaking out and watching movies at the cinemas. And I was interested in how do they do this. So I first saw a screenplay. Then I realized, this isn't so hard. I compared it to the movie, started writing screenplays. Then an opportunity came when a production company needed a screenwriter. And so the application method was they give you a scene, a paragraph, a setting, maybe somebody at the supermarket, then something happens, maybe there's an explosion or something. So it was a scene like that. Then they tell you to write it out as a script. So that's how I applied for it. And I got the job. Now that's when I realized, okay, this thing can start paying. Yeah.
Any formal training in terms of writing? It's just amateur, if I may use that word, or passion.
Okay, it's a passion. It's a passion. Most of the stuff I've learned is out of research. The only training I did have is in the production side of film, that is video camera work and sound editing. And that's just a certificate. That's the only formal training I've had. The rest have been from workshops, interests, searching in the internet, and all that. So I started out as a screenwriter before I became a novelist. Yeah.
Just tell me a bit about your screenwriting experience before you were published, before you started publishing books. And then we can move forward, because I know you've done a lot in both areas in terms of book publishing and script writing. So it's nice to talk about both of them, because I think both of them is earning as a writer. So I find that interesting.
Just repeat the question, please.
Well, you started as a script writer, so we can start with that. We can talk about your script writing journey. And then when we're done with that, we can move to books, or where you get to the point where they merge, or you started off as now a published book author. We can now pick up that. But now, let's start. You've gotten your first job as a script writer. How much are you making, and what are you writing for? Is it something we know, something nice?
Yeah. Okay, my first job wasn't paying too much. I was getting around 5K. It was 5K per script. So, but I was still having a formal. I was still okay. Formally, I'm trained as an engineer. Mm-hmm. So I used to supplement my income, so to speak, with script writing. Mm-hmm. It was 5K per script, but I loved the process of creating those stories. And since I'd been hired as a writer for TV, we used to sit in the writer's room, and about 3 or 4 writers then discuss the outlines of each episode, right? And then go, once we have broken it down to the scene by scene steps, we were allowed to go home, write on our own, break it down, and come up with the final script, send it to the script editor. Then eventually the producer, once you've made any corrections that they need you to make. So that was the journey, but I found it it was a little bit, even though we were still about 5 writers working together, for some reason I found it lonely. We didn't know other writers so much, and if we did, it was more at an acquaintance level, and not as colleagues, where you're able to share work with people working in different shows from different production companies. So that's what led me to found the Kenya Scriptwriters Guild. It was pretty much just out of loneliness that professional loneliness, that I decided to start it out, find a place where writers can meet and just discuss our own journeys and what are our problems and where we want the industry as writers to go. So that was in 2014. So I was a very young writer, so it was hard for people to find me credible. I'd just done a few episodes for a few shows on Mnet. So, but I braved it out, and yeah, right now the organization is registered. I even resigned. There have been other chairpersons for the guild, and I wrote until 2017. Now that's when the transition to writing novels started.
How did it move from writing for TV, where you see your end product, right, to now writing novels in a book, hopefully, which can also be turned into a film, but we know it's different kind of writing. So how did you go to this other one?
Because script writing is very structural, and it involves a big team where you have to make sure everything has to be right. Mostly you'll find it doesn't work that way. That's why there's so many bad movies and very few very good movies. So I think it was a matter, and also career-wise, because now I was changing. I lost my job as an engineer, so now I started taking writing very seriously as a profession. Okay, professionally, I'd been writing not too long, by the way. Professionally, I'd been writing for 4 years. That's when now I really started considering it as because I saw a little bit of income coming in. But then when I decided to completely switch, I realized that I cannot only rely upon, because 5K per episode was peanuts. It's peanuts still. And from my research, I saw that I could try different things, and creatively, I wanted to express myself without having to rely on other people. Express my stories. There are certain stories that get better when you target film, and there are other stories that get better when you target novels. So the first story that I had was an action thriller, and I didn't find it. I found that I'd had to compromise a lot if I chose the film media to take it out, to bring it out. So the novel was the best avenue for me. And since scriptwriting is very structural, and the writing novels you have a lot of room for creativity, you're allowed to experiment a lot. I decided to take that route of writing the novel. So that was 2016, 2017. That's when I came out with my first novel. Yes.
So yeah, we were talking about your first novel. You know, you never mentioned its name, because I've read a couple of things online, and I'm not seeing the name of the book.
Oh, the name is I'm Not a Black Widow, but I Spin Webs.
Wow.
Okay, so the novel, I'd already explained the inspiration. So the novel is about this Black Ops unit that is tasked with fighting corruption cases. And it's led by a lady. But as usual, when it comes to corruption, Kenya, it is politicized, or they try to make it like the person doing the investigation is biased. So along the case that she's investigating, she's really rubbing the high-powered people the wrong way. She's investigating a case where there's been fraud in a very major project, and they label her a terrorist. So she has to battle that. And the story is basically about that, how she'll solve the case, and two, how she'll also make sure that her name is cleared.
If I may ask, your main character is a woman. How was it getting into the character of that gender and delivering this story from the perspective of a woman?
It's okay for me. How I do it when I'm working with characters that I'm not in a position to be, or I've not experienced firsthand. I just make sure that I create them as a human being. Just imagine them as a regular human being who makes decisions. Then from there, I sort of mold them using the research that I get, and it has always worked for me. I've never received any from the readers, especially. In fact, for that particular novel, it was mostly ladies who loved it. I expected it to be more the gents who will, because it's an action thriller, you expect gents will be the first people to jump at it. But it was the ladies who loved the storytelling. So that's my sort of secret when I'm writing characters who have never had first-hand experience with. Just create them as a human being, because we cannot stereotype anyone, and everyone is unique.
Before you write a book, you think of the plot first, then the character.
Yes, plot always comes first. But even before plot, I think of why I want to write the story. That's why even with the first novel that I've talked about, I first explained my inspiration behind it. Then from there, now I can think of the plot. Then the character adds to the plot. But especially for that kind of novel, an action thriller, it's normally action thrillers and movies. It's normally the plot that drives it more than the character. The character enters to add spice and realism to it. Yeah.
This is your first book, and you're feeling a bit vulnerable, and you're taking a risk in this new field because you've moved from script writing to now writing a full novel. So who do you turn to in terms of maybe editing a book or proofreading it, or just reading it the first time before they tell you, okay, I think it's good to go? What I'm asking for is, who is your support system? Who's helped you write this book? What kind of support did you seek to finish your book?
Okay, I'll explain two different scenarios. So for my first novel, since it was I didn't expect any support. It was actually my motivation to write it, because it was a story I wanted to tell it the way I want it. So I just wrote it out, did everything, the planning, outlining, structuring, marketing, everything was on my own. And I learned along the way what not to do, what to do. Did my research from YouTube, how novelists work and such. So my support system was created from that. So moving on to my second novel, I was lucky to have an email list of friends and colleagues, and most of these I'd interacted with them through the Kenya Scriptwriters Guild and other filmmakers, because ideally storytellers are also good readers. And that's why I created my base, my foundation. Then I grew my social media presence also. I'd like it to be larger, but it's not. But it was also part of my sort of support system. Then when it comes to editing, from the first novel, what I did, I just reached out to my fellow writers, and they gave me feedback on the first draft. Also my family members, but I was really apprehensive about family members because they'll be a little cautious on what they tell you, even if it's bad. But mostly I used my mom for grammar because she's very good. She's Ugandan, and what they are taught in school is English mainly. So she has, and she was also a company secretary. So she knows how to put words together, how to communicate. So I used her for grammar, but for how the story really is, how the feeling of the story, I use writers that I'm not really close to, so that I get good feedback from them. Then I can alter the story from there. So moving on to my second novel, since I had people who've read my previous story, I used a few of them as what we call beta readers, the ones that get the initial draft before you start putting it out or refining it. So I got a few of them who helped me with editing, and that's basically the support system I have. So with each project that I put out, by the time I was doing my third, fourth novel, I was pretty sure how to do it at a professional level. And also but most of the stuff I did on my own, even designing the covers. My first cover was horrible. So there's a graphic designer who saw it and said, man, I'll design it for you for free again. So he redesigned it for me. I put out like a second edition. Then now I started learning on my own how to do also to make it more professional, using tools like there's a website called canva.com, and it's very nice. It's the one I used to do this cover.
I have seen it on your social media. That's your latest book.
Yes. So no, it's actually my third novel, but it's the first one that I decided to really print it out. Yeah. So that's the tool I used to design that cover. So yeah, I got pretty good at it, and now I'm my own machine.
How long did you take to write the first book, the next book, the third? I know you've written 4 books, right?
Yes, 4.
Yeah.
So for my first 2 books, I wrote them in a year because it was one story, but I split it into 2. And it's still, since it was the action thriller, they can stand alone. You can read them as 2 separate stories, but they're interlinked. So that one I wrote in 1 year. Those 2 I wrote in 1 year. Then this one I wrote it in between 2018 and 2019. Yeah, 2018 and 2019, because it required a lot of research, because it is based on Syokimau. So I had to do a lot of research on it, and also do a little bit of translation, so that the dialogue, because Syokimau was a Kamba prophetess, some of the dialogue is in Kikamba, So I used to reach out. I have a Kamba friend who used to translate for me some of the lines. Not too much of it is in Kamba, though. It's like 1% of it is in Kamba.
You yourself are not Kamba, but you decided to pick Kamba.
Yes, there's a reason behind that. It's because I moved to Cumberland, basically. Even right now, I'm close to Cumberland. Normally, all my inspiration is always about something that's happening around me. So when I moved to Machakos, that's after I lost my engineering job. When I moved to Machakos at the river in Machakos, I always used to pass by Syokimau on Mombasa Road. Then for a while, I'd had a story, a sci-fi story, but I didn't know how to put it out. I didn't know the themes and what the plot would be until I saw one day I was going for a meeting in Nairobi and I was late. So the bus was the first option, but it was slow because of traffic on Mombasa Road. It's usually hell. And I decided to use the train, the Syokimau train. So when I went to the train station, I saw a statue of Syokimau. So she was standing like this. I even remember how she was standing, and then she was looking somewhere in the air. So I was curious about the statue and the story behind her, what she did for the Kambas. So as I researched, I found out that she was a prophetess, how she predicted the building of the railway in the 1800s, building of the railway, and the coming of the British colonialists. So that's how I started linking her story to what I wanted to put out as a sci-fi. So to make it modern, I imagined her granddaughter living in the present. She's been having nightmares, but she does not understand why these nightmares are constant in her life. The nightmares have stunted her. She's not been able to get a job, although she's very well educated. But then one day she discovers something she's seen in her nightmares, like an earring. She has been seeing in her nightmares. And as she traces the origin of the earrings, now that's when she starts discovering that she is actually a descendant of Syokimau. And she also has, those nightmares are just an extension of her prophetic abilities. So that's what the story is about. And that's why it's called the Rebirth of Syokimau, because now I'm taking her granddaughter and making her into a sort of Syokimau of the modern times.
How does one access your book?
It's just direct. You DM me. I'm on social media. You just direct message me, and I'll get it to you.
So you've transitioned from screenwriting to writing novels. What would you say is the big difference that you've noticed in terms of your career success or shift? So it could be personal, it could be professional, from writing to now book writing.
Okay, I still do both right now. Whenever I get the opportunity, I can do both. But with screenwriting, currently I do mostly consulting. And with the novels, the main difference from screenwriting is the novels are less constrictive in terms of the rules that are behind it. Even with scripting, even the formatting is way different from writing novels. So that is the major difference. But creatively, personally, I don't find too much difference, because it's still the same process for me in terms of coming up with a plot, creating characters, and outlining a story properly. Same hurdle, same stress that you go through. So I don't find major differences between screenwriting and writing novels, apart from the format and the rules that govern both, which if I get into is a little bit, I could take an hour explaining the main difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, and my successes, for my fourth novel. My fourth novel was a nonfiction, and I wrote it when at the height of COVID. So at the time, since I was doing a few screenwriting projects, and the lockdown really affected business. You doing shoots and such, video shoots wasn't possible, and I was also doing driving taxi. I was a taxi driver at that time. So I decided to write about taxi driving, and the process I took to get because there's the private license that you have for a driving license, private driving license, and then if you want to become a taxi driver, you have to get the public service driving license. So that process was pretty hectic, and I realized that there's no information. If somebody wants to become an Uber driver or become just a regular taxi driver, there's no documentation. There's nowhere that is written on how to get that public service driving license. And since it was hectic for me, and in some situations, very I was placed in some very funny situations, I decided to write about it.
So your fourth novel is 100% nonfiction.
Yeah. My fourth book is 100% nonfiction, and it's a pretty short book. But I didn't want it to read like a manual. I wanted it to be a little bit fun. So it looks logo like a children's book. Even the font that I used in the cover is a little bit a children's book. So I wanted it to be fun. It's titled How to Become an Uber Driver. When I launched it, it was such a success. Okay, not millionaire success, but it got a good traction, especially on social media and on Amazon. On Amazon, in fact, in the opening week, it topped its category. So yeah, it was number one. It was a small category, not a big category, the transport category. So that is one of my successes, so to speak. Another success is with the Rebirth of Syokimau. That's Syokimau story. I initially wanted it to be a screenplay. So I got an opportunity to pitch it to some producers, and they liked it. Were a number of us, about 12 screenwriters that were chosen. Sorry, and it was a sort of Pan-African program. The initial pitch. Okay, once I finished with the program, it wasn't chosen for production as a film, but I kept at it. So with that, that's when I decided to convert it to a novel. and it worked. It worked well as a. Then, as I got feedback from people, another opportunity came up. There was a competition that was conducted by the Kenya Film Commission, and they were looking for film concepts that could be developed into screenplays and further into a film. So I submitted the project. Since I already had the structure as a novel, I could easily convert it into a film concept, not the actual screenplay itself. So I converted it to a film concept, pitched it, and I won the competition.
Wow.
So so I as a result, I got a scholarship to a film school in Jerusalem. It was an online scholarship. It's called the Sam Spiegel Film School. So with that, I went through the lab, and that's the first time that I really wrote down the script to the concept that I had. Now, once I finished that scholarship, now I'm looking for producers. I'm pitching to various producers to see whether I can actualize it into a film. So that's another success. The most recent success I got was a grant. I got a writer's grant for, how can I put it? It's just a general grant to writers who've done stuff, who are recognized, and you pitch a few projects that you have, then they give you a little money to push you along. Sometimes you just don't have that constant paycheck. So yeah, it's a grant for Black writers. It's based in the USA. Yeah, they're based in US. They're called FIRE. It's FIYAH. If you Google them, you'll get them. Yeah. So they only Black writers grants, whether you're in Europe, USA, Africa, as long as you have dark skin, you can and you have a good profile that is that they're interested in, then they'll give you a grant. Yeah. So yeah, those are my successes. Many more, but those are the major ones.
What do you want to achieve to feel that you're very successful as an
author? I think right now I'm at a point where I think artistically I'm doing what I want. Maybe just get more eyeballs on the projects that I'm doing. Success is where I'm able to really support my family and myself with purely writing. That's when I'll feel that at least, because getting constant income is tricky in writing. So you have to really rely on projects. And since I'm at a point where I can literally do whatever I want, the only thing that is a hurdle to me is financial. Yeah. So once the financial side also comes in, I'll be fine. I'll be able to do other things, and also create avenues for other artists to come in and do their thing. If I'm able to fund an artist or two, develop their own portfolio, I'll be happy.
What is the experience so far? And you are self-published. I'd like to hear how that has been working out for you from the first book up to now the fourth book.
It's been very hard you're learning on the job. And Kenya, there was a time I believe that your stories could be, publishing was a little bit easier because we had traditional kind of publishers where you get signed, you're given an advance, and yeah. But currently, the publishers are concentrating only on education. So it's a major hurdle when it comes to marketing and distributing your books. Writing a story, to me, is not a problem. The problem comes when it comes to marketing and distribution and getting funds to do that. Either the only way that works is, and what has worked for writers in my current generation, is those who have managed to get grants. And most of these grants are from outside, not from Kenya. So the local support is really not there. There's no structure for a self-published author. And even just even for an author who wants to do it the traditional way, get signed to a traditional publishing house, it's still very hard unless your book is picked up as a class reader, or it's it's selected in a major competition outside Kenya that is recognized worldwide. That's when now you really get to live as an author in the actual sense, in the professional sense.
I think that's good, and it's allowed. I wanted to ask also, this was a question I had thought of, but also you've mentioned that you are developing your book into a script and it will be adapted into a film. And I know you're also an actor. So I was just wondering, who do you have in mind maybe to feature in your film? Who are you seeing as the Syokimau lady? Is it a Kenyan, or who are you seeing acting in your film? What are you seeing?
Kenyan.
Yes.
Kenyan. It has to be a Kenyan. Okay. It has to be a Kenyan.
Anyone in mind?
If at all, like, sorry?
Any actor or actress in mind for that role or for the roles in the book?
Have I really thought about that? No. There's a point I had somebody in mind, but I think there's a point I had in mind. But in any case, it will have to be a Kenyan. Must be a Kenyan. Because anyway, all the characters are Kenyan. There's only one person who's not a Kenyan, and yeah, that's the only leeway I could give somebody from outside getting it. But it's kind of tricky also, because if, for instance, I really get a production company that's internationally recognized, it all depends on the negotiation. Because these major production companies, if, for example, we say Netflix picks it up, they will want star power. And when they want star power, they might insist on having somebody from America or South Africa or Nigeria take that major role. But I think I'll just insist on a Kenyan.
You might need to bring your Peter home to come and act.
It has to be. It's a Kamba story, and it's going to feel very it won't feel right if it's somebody else doing it.
So if you were given free access to anyone, any writer that you admire, who would it be?
There's Abel Mutua has to be in the list.
Okay.
I've watched The Real House Helps of Kawangware. Kawangware, yes. Yeah, that I loved it when he was in the project. When he was attached, right now he's not attached to the project. But at that time, it was really a really funny show, and also his development as a writer and branding. He's created his own structure around himself. He's distributing his own things with Click Bang, his YouTube channel. I loved that movie, Click Bang. It's my favorite right now. It used to be Nairobi Half-Life, but right now it's Click Bang. So in terms of a writer, I'm really looking up to Abel Mutua.
Maybe let me combine these two questions. What is the best advice that you've been given as a writer? And what advice would you give an up-and-coming writer? Yeah.
I think the best advice at this stage in my career is own, and that's from Abel Mutua still. own your product. Own your product. If you can promote, create a structures around it. If you can promote it, because that gives you that creative freedom. So own your product, and once that is done, the rest is it's hard work, but you can determine wherever your story goes. Like for instance, with the Rebirth of Syokimau, I could have the option of getting it traditionally published where somebody else owns it. But right now, as long as I'm owning it, I can put it out as a novel. I can put it out as a film. I can even put it out as a video game. I can do anything I want to do with it. I can package it the way that I want. Own your product. If you can own it and create structures on how to manage it, that's the best advice I've received from somebody else, and that's Abel Mutua, because he's done it himself. There are people who say it, but they don't do it. So he's said it and he's done it. Then the best advice I could give to somebody is very simple. Write. You just write. Concentrate on your craft. Keep writing, and things will happen. As long as you keep your eye open, make sure you do your research, because what tends to happen is you start writing, then when you smell success somewhere, you forget your craft. So always concentrate on your craft. Make sure you're working on it. Even up to now, I still attend workshops. I still try to pitch my projects. Still try to learn how best to put words together. So it's all about that. Concentrate on your craft and work hard on it. And if you have that drive, things will start happening.